Hello everyone, this is my Chapter 6 video discussion. There's only 2 questions, so I'll answer the 2 questions. Question 1 says, describe the 2 basic components of the oppositional culture thesis. To what extent do you find this explanation for the achievement gap persuasive? So the first component mentioned on page 154 of our textbook is the idea of associating good grades with acting white. And behaving in ways associated with white people. And then the second component mentioned in the textbook is that because of widespread discrimination, many African American students have developed an identity in opposition to dominant white culture, and thus in opposition to school success. And that was a quote from page 154 as well. And I think the explanation for the achievement gap is persuasive because throughout history it's kind of obvious that typically white people are given better chances and better resources, and one of these resources and chances they're given is better schooling. And in our textbook on page 153, it states that public education in the U.S. depends heavily on property taxes, and inequalities in housing values translate to inequalities in schools. So that's kind of like that idea that we saw in a previous chapter where it's kind of like a cycle. You have bad housing, then bad schools, then bad job. But this is saying that if you have a lot of property tax, then that inequality is going to translate to inequality in school. So that's question 1. And then question 2 says, define symbolic violence, provide a specific real-life example of symbolic violence, and explain how it contributes to the reproduction of racial inequality in the educational system. Use the main text to support your response. So symbolic violence is the idea that the dominant group in a society makes its preferences, tastes, and norms appear to be superior to those of the non-dominant group, and that definition was found on page 158 of our textbook. And one example I came up with from real life, I don't know if this applies to other people, I'm pretty sure, I know it's not just my school because other people from where I live have this too, and I think it's all across the U.S., but some of you may not have the same thing, but it's the dot system in the library where the different colored dots translate to the difficulty of the book. And as the graph on page 150 of our textbook shows, whites tend to have a lot higher average GPAs than other races. And so typically in school, they read at a higher level. And then they are suggested to read the books with these colored dots that means higher level. And this system leads to inequality in the education system because the students at the lower end of the dot system are typically of a race other than white, and of course there's always going to be exceptions. Some white students are kind of low on the reading level, and some other races are high on the reading level, but typically on average white students' GPAs are higher, so they will tend to read at a higher reading level. And so these kids are seen as inferior because the higher level dots are kind of seen as a norm in school now because they've been made that way by the high number of white students that are reading at these high levels. And so the kids at the lower levels are now seen as inferior because of that. I think that's pretty much it. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to watching the rest of you guys' discussion. Thank you.